Everyone thinks they know where to hide during a zombie apocalypse. Schools, hospitals, police stations, these seem like obvious safe havens, right? But here's what survival experts won't tell you. These safe places are actually death traps that'll get you killed faster than running naked through a horde. I've studied real outbreak scenarios, analyzed military containment protocols, and interviewed actual emergency response specialists. What I discovered will flip everything you think you know about zombie survival upside down. Just think of your local mall. In movies, it's the perfect fortress. In reality, it's a concrete coffin with 1,000 ways in and 0 ways out. Today, I'm exposing the 8 deadliest places people run to when the dead start walking. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why these locations are zombie magnets and what you should do instead. Because when the outbreak hits, and experts say it's not if, but when, your first decision determines whether you survive the first 24 hours or become another statistic. Let's get real for a second. You've probably never thought seriously about a zombie outbreak because it sounds like science fiction. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The CDC has an actual zombie preparedness plan. The military runs zombie outbreak simulations. Why? Because whether it's a rabies mutation, a parasitic infection, or a bioweapon gone wrong, the behavioral patterns are identical. Aggressive, infected humans, spreading rapidly through population centers. Most people's survival plan is basically, I'll figure it out when it happens. That's not a plan. That's a death sentence. The average person has about 72 hours of food in their house, 0 understanding of tactical movement or defensive positioning. When panic hits and everyone's running to the same obvious safe spots, you're not just fighting zombies anymore. You're fighting desperate humans who'll kill you for a can of beans. The military calls it civilian convergence zones, places where untrained people naturally flock during emergencies. These zones become overcrowded, undersupplied, and impossible to defend. If you're thinking like everyone else, you're already dead. I'm not some keyboard warrior making this up. I've spent 3 weeks researching this topic, interviewing former military personnel, emergency response coordinators, and survival specialists. I've studied historical siege warfare, modern urban combat scenarios, and actual disease outbreak responses. The patterns are always the same. During Hurricane Katrina, the safe places became the most dangerous. The Superdome turned into a nightmare of violence and desperation. Hospitals became death traps when power failed and supplies ran out. Schools became overcrowded refugee camps with no security and dwindling resources. The people who survived weren't the ones who followed the crowd. They were the ones who thought differently. I've also analyzed zombie fiction not for entertainment, but for tactical lessons. Writers like Max Brooks consult with actual military strategists. The scenarios they create are based on real emergency response protocols and historical precedents. When multiple independent sources, military, medical, and fictional, all identify the same critical failures, you pay attention. Here's exactly what we're covering today. I'm going to walk you through 8 locations that seem safe but are actually zombie death traps. For each location, I'll explain the specific tactical failures that make them dangerous, show you real-world examples of why they fail, and give you better alternatives that most people never consider. We'll start with the most obvious trap, shopping malls, and work our way through hospitals, schools, police stations, and other seemingly logical choices. Then I'll reveal the 3 types of locations that actually offer survival advantages and why most people overlook them completely. This isn't theoretical. Every point I make is backed by military doctrine, historical precedent, or expert analysis. By the end, you'll have a complete framework for evaluating any location's survival potential and a clear action plan that puts you ahead of 99% of the population. Everyone's seen Dawn of the Dead. The mall looks perfect. Supplies, multiple stores, wide open spaces. But here's why it's a death trap. Malls are designed for maximum foot traffic, which means maximum entry points. The average mall has 15 to 20 entrances, multiple service corridors, and skylights that can't be secured. You're not defending a fortress, you're trying to plug a sieve. Worse, malls are zombie magnets. They're located at major intersections with massive parking lots that funnel infected directly to your location. The moment you start making noise, and you will because malls echo everything, you're broadcasting your position to every zombie within miles. Military tacticians call this signature amplification. You might as well fire a flare gun. The smart move? Avoid retail centers entirely. Look for industrial buildings with limited access points and thick walls. warehouses, manufacturing plants, or distribution centers offer better defensive positions with fewer vulnerabilities. Hospitals seem logical. Medical supplies, backup power, reinforced construction. But think about what hospitals are during an outbreak. Ground zero for infected patients. Every zombie movie gets this wrong. They show empty hospitals. In reality, hospitals would be overflowing with bite victims, panicked families, and overwhelmed staff. Here's the tactical nightmare. Hospitals have multiple floors connected by stairwells and elevators that become vertical death traps. They have dozens of entrances for ambulances, staff, and patients. The ventilation systems spread airborne pathogens. And when the power fails, which it will, you're trapped in a dark maze filled with infected patients and medical equipment you can't use without electricity. Real alternative? Veterinary clinics. They have medical supplies, fewer access points, and won't be overrun with infected humans. Most people never think of them, which means you won't be competing with desperate crowds. Police stations feel safe because of the weapons and trained personnel. But here's what happens in a real outbreak. Cops abandon their posts to protect their families. The stations become empty buildings with complex layouts that are impossible to defend with a small group. Police stations are also designed for processing criminals, not siege defense. They have holding cells, evidence rooms, and administrative areas that create blind spots and choke points. The weapons are locked in armories that require codes or keys you don't have. And like hospitals, they're located in urban centers where zombie density is highest. Better choice? Fire stations. They're built for rapid response with large bay doors you can control. They're stocked with tools and emergency supplies, and they're usually positioned on main roads for quick escape routes. Schools seem perfect for large groups. Cafeterias for food storage, gymnasiums for sleeping, multiple classrooms for organization. But schools are designed to hold hundreds of people with minimal security. During an emergency, they become refugee camps with no crowd control and dwindling supplies. The real killer is the social dynamics. Put desperate people in close quarters with limited resources, and you get violence, theft, and power struggles. Schools have too many windows, too many entrances, and layouts that spread your defensive capabilities too thin. You can't watch every hallway, secure every door, or control every access point. Smarter option. Small office buildings. They're designed for 20 to 50 people, have controlled access, and usually include break rooms with food storage and water access. Military bases sound ideal. Weapons, trained personnel, defensive positions. But bases are the first targets for any organized zombie response. They're also the first places desperate civilians will try to reach, creating massive crowds of potential infected. Here's the bigger problem. Military bases are designed to keep people out, not to keep infected in. If the base gets compromised, and it will because bases are huge with multiple entry points, you're trapped inside with infected soldiers who know the layout better than you do. The alternative most people miss? National Guard armories. They're smaller, less obvious, and usually located away from population centers. They have weapons and equipment, but without the massive target profile of full military installations. Underground seems smart. You're hidden, protected, and away from surface threats. But basements and bunkers become tombs when you lose your exit route. One zombie in the stairwell, and you're trapped underground with no escape options. Underground locations also have ventilation problems, limited food storage, and psychological issues from prolonged isolation. If your entrance gets blocked by debris, other survivors, or a zombie horde, you're not in a shelter, you're in a grave. Better approach? Second-story locations with removable access. You can control who comes up, you have visibility of the surrounding area, and you can always jump if necessary. Libraries, small office buildings, or residential apartments offer better tactical advantages. Rural farmhouses seem perfect. Isolation, food production, wide sightlines. But isolation works both ways. When you're alone and something goes wrong, injury, illness, equipment failure, there's no backup. Farmhouses are also obvious targets for other survivors who want your resources. The bigger issue is sustainability. Farming requires going outside regularly, making noise, and maintaining equipment. Every trip to check crops or tend animals is a risk, and if zombies find your location, you're surrounded by open ground with nowhere to hide. Smarter rural choice? Ranger stations or park service buildings. They're isolated but built for emergency response, they have communication equipment, and they're positioned with multiple escape routes through wilderness areas. Churches attract crowds during emergencies. People seek comfort, community, and spiritual guidance. But crowds mean noise, resource competition, and increased infection risk. Churches are also designed for gatherings, not defense. Large open spaces, multiple entrances, and windows that can't be secured. The social dynamics are deadly. Religious communities often prioritize helping others over tactical security. They'll take in anyone who asks, including people who might be infected or dangerous. Compassion becomes a liability when survival is at stake. Alternative? Small community centers or lodge halls. They're built for groups but smaller than churches, they have kitchen facilities, and they're usually located away from main population centers. Now that you know what to avoid, here's what actually works. The best survival locations share 3 characteristics: limited access points, sustainable resources, and tactical flexibility. Limited access means you can control who enters and defend against threats. Look for buildings with 1 or 2 entrances. Maximum, preferably on upper floors or with removable access like ladders or stairs you can destroy. Sustainable resources means water, food storage, and power generation.